While the USA and Iran both say we don't want war, tensions mount when Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Acting Defense Secretary Patrick Shanahan briefed the House and Senate this past week. They offered evidence that Iran may be prepared to attack American military and diplomatic personnel in the region. Members of Congress came away divided as to the threat. What next? Let's ask John Sitilides, a geopolitical strategist and consultant to the U.S. State Department. John, welcome back.
Good to be back. Great to be with you.
Pentagon is working on a plan to send 10,000 troops to the region where we've already deployed an aircraft carrier and other military assets. How close are we to some kind of miscalculation triggering a shooting war?
It depends on what the Iranian government does in the Middle East. That's really what it comes down to. The U.S. has sent, as you correctly note, a bomber squadron to the Middle East. It has sent an aircraft carrier, the USS Lincoln. And now I think the number of troops is questionable. I don't know if there's going to be a precise figure. There was 10,000, there was 5,000 in the media reports. Now maybe they're talking about 1,500. But the larger issue is the U.S. is looking to work with our allies in the region to contain and to deter Iran after learning from intelligence sources in late April that Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Quds Force in the Iranian Revolutionary Guard Corps, was activating proxies to attack U.S. and allied interests throughout the Middle East.
So you're comfortable that as all of this military brinksmanship is rolling out, that there is some diplomacy going on in the background?
Most of the diplomacy seems to be external. It's a matter of coercive diplomacy, where the United States is signaling to the Iranian government that it will not tolerate any types of Iranian-inspired attacks against U.S. forces, U.S. diplomats, U.S. assets, anything U.S. or allied in the region. But it's looking to deter Iran from doing so. I don't think anyone in the White House is looking to initiate any type of a military attack on Iran. But you deter by making sure that they understand that there is overwhelming military force in case they badly miscalculate.
Well, in just under a week, Iran has quadrupled its nuclear enrichment capacity. By cornering Iran, do we risk pushing them toward developing nukes?
My own sense, and speaking with people who know the Iranian nuclear program far better than I do, is that Iran has never let up in its pursuit of nuclear weapons. And in fact, one of the things that we've discovered is that technically they were in quote-unquote compliance with the JCPOA, but that's because that agreement only covered the declared facilities that the Iranian government has at its disposal, not the ones that we suspected that are hidden, where the UN inspectors are not permitted access there. Only the Iranians can verify their own nuclear weapons activities or deny that any are taking place. And look at where we are now. Just several weeks into this latest quote-unquote crisis, the Iranian government makes very clear it can move back towards a nuclear weapons development program in a matter of weeks, months at the longest. This is not a 10-year program. They're ready to roll whenever they need to.
Sure, and back when that JCPOA deal was struck, Iran, like many others, expected Hillary Clinton to be president. So Mr. Trump's style sure is a curveball. He seems to want to keep everybody guessing. Is that working? Or after 2+ years of tweets, have world leaders figured out that he's more bark than bite?
I think it depends on which leaders, with which countries and governments they're running, and what issues we're dealing with. When it comes to Iran, there clearly is a lot of mixed signaling out of the White House. So on the one hand, the president makes very clear he doesn't want to start a war. He doesn't want the U.S. to enter into another major military engagement, especially in the Middle East, after Afghanistan and Iraq, the wars that he condemned in his presidential campaign. On the other hand, he says that if the Iranian government provokes or attacks the U.S. government or U.S. assets in the Middle East, it's the quote-unquote official end of Iran, leaving it to the Supreme Leader, Ali Khamenei, and Qasem Soleimani, and the Supreme Council, the Assembly of Experts, to try to figure out what the U.S. will possibly do next. But it's deliberate to keep them off balance.
Well, to that point, candidate Trump campaigned against what he called these stupid wars. And what we're hearing now sounds reminiscent of what we were told before the 2003 Iraq invasion. And we could count on less international support this time. How would he sell this war to war-weary Americans?
Well, I don't know that Americans are weary of war. I think what Americans are tired of is the United States entering into military conflicts and not winning them decisively and quickly. This is the way wars have historically been won, either by the U.S., by Russia, or any other country. Now we have 10, 15-year wars seemingly without end. I think that's the political problem in the United States. But I would also say, Holland, there's a difference here with what's happening with Iran right now and what happened with Iraq. It was a very different international environment. It was shortly after the September 11th attacks, and the fear in the U.S. government was that a rogue regime with weapons of mass destruction could conduct a terrorist attack far more catastrophic than what took place on September 11th. This is different. The U.S. wants Iran to stop looking to rebuild the Persian Empire from Afghanistan to the Mediterranean coast, to focus on its own internal dynamics, to repair its own economy, and to be a peaceful, normal neighbor in the Middle East. If the Iranian government militarily attacks the U.S. or our allies in the region and continues to be the world's leading sponsor of international terrorism, they will have a price to pay.
Well, next year is also an election year there, as it is here. President Trump ran against war. Would a hardline Iranian parliamentary gang be actually bolstered by conflict?
I have a hard time believing that the Iranians are looking to trigger a military conflict either. It would not be a fair fight. They would be destroyed. Now, we don't want to see a military conflict, and we don't want to see endless, quote-unquote, post-war situations in Iran, a far larger country than Iraq or Afghanistan. So no one serious is talking about anything along those lines. But the fear is a miscalculation. That the supreme leader, that Major General Soleimani, or someone else in Iran will provoke the U.S. accidentally and inadvertently and trigger a robust, muscular response. And then if Iran feels it has to retaliate in kind, then you have an escalation that I think nobody would like to see happen in the region.
At the brink. Thank you, John Sitilides.
Pleasure to be here.